What the hell is even that?
Last we saw Hulk, he had merged his two halves and helped the Avengers save the universe. We now pick up on his life through the eyes of his cousin and her journey into becoming the She-Hulk. We meet Jennifer Walters, a lawyer, as she rehearses her closing statement for a trial. Her fellow lawyer, Dennis, criticizes it.
But today, you, the jury, can prove that's not the case.
More smiles.
That's a strange thing to suggest. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's appropriate to smile during a closing statement, especially considering the seriousness of the crime. His criticisms make no sense. He's dismissed without hesitation by Jen's friend Nikki, and he's comically shoved out of the scene. He feels more like a cartoon than a real character. All in all, this is an awkward start.
I just need to stick the landing on this case.
You will. And if it doesn't go our way, you can just Hulk out.
How would that accomplish anything? I was under the impression Nikki was meant to be a relatively intelligent character. Why does she make this nonsensical suggestion? Well, it's a clumsy way of introducing the topic of Jen being a Hulk, and transitioning to her origin story. This will become a trend of the episode. The writers want particular things to happen, so awkward events are shoehorned in to set them up. We flash back to Jen on a road trip with Bruce. He explains why he's back in human form.
My arm started to heal. It's all because, I made this little device which keeps me in human form.
Why would being in human form allow his arm to heal? His Hulk form is stronger in every way, so wouldn't it better contribute to healing him? The reason for this contrivance is that the writers need Bruce to be able to bleed. That way his blood can get into Jen's system and she can become She-Hulk. They've come up with this incoherent reasoning so the sequence of events can occur. A spaceship from Sakaar suddenly appears, causing a car crash. Later, Smart Hulk will say,
"They're probably trying to deliver a message. I gotta get to the bottom of that. Weird stuff just kind of finds you when you're a Hulk."
It's ignored for the rest of the episode. It's the catalyst for Jen's Hulkification, yet the characters barely seem to care about it. Sure, they're primarily concerned with Jen's condition, but it feels strange that such an important plot point is dropped for the rest of the episode. And if it isn't eventually justified, Jen's origin will become yet more awkward and contrived. Jen gets Bruce's blood in her system, causing her to Hulk out. This doesn't make sense. In order for Jen to go through this sort of Hulkification, she needs two things: Bruce's blood and an extremely high dose of gamma radiation. If you recall, Bruce became the Hulk after getting injected with a radiation-resistant serum and getting bombarded with gamma radiation. The serum allows his body to synthesize radiation, and the gamma served as the substance to be synthesized. Both are necessary components. Sure, contact with Bruce's blood causes mutation, and some level of gamma radiation is passed through it.
It's possible gamma sickness. Milwaukee. A man drank one of those Guarana sodas. Guess it had a little more kick than he was looking for.
But not enough to cause full-blown Hulkification. To become Abomination, Blonsky needed a large dose of gamma radiation in addition to Bruce's blood. Basically, Bruce's cells are the engine and gamma is the fuel. Jen gets the former, but not the latter. And I'm not certain those few drops of blood would be enough. Jen runs off into the woods, and she wakes up hours later with no memory. She makes her way to the bathroom of a bar, looking disheveled and beat up. Some women enter and immediately set to helping Jen, in a peculiar manner.
Put this on. Oh, thank you, but I just need to get cleaned up. I don't need you to put makeup on me.
They don't ask about her injuries, offer to call the police, or even tend her wounds. Instead, they apply makeup, wrap her in a fuzzy coat, and put her in some shiny shoes. It's beyond bizarre. What person would react this way? Yet the scene treats them like they're being helpful.
Whoever did this to you does not care about you.
You do not need him.
Or her.
Or them.
How considerate of them to respect the abuser's identity. Jen calls Bruce and waits outside for him. A group of guys exit the bar and try chatting her up. She gets so annoyed by their pestering that she hulks out, and Smart Hulk has to tackle her before she literally murders them. It's convenient that he happened to arrive at that exact moment. The men don't say anything overtly rude or threatening, and their actions aren't anything more than annoying. Yet the directing gives them this sinister tone.
You with anyone?
I'm waiting for my ride.
What's your name?
Like the bathroom scene, it's tonally bizarre. The whole escapade to this bar is strange. The women are portrayed as comically friendly, while the men are portrayed as comically malicious. I can't take any of this seriously. And Jen's attempted homicide is never addressed. She never expresses guilt over it, and Smart Hulk doesn't chastise her. What the fuck? Jen wakes up in Hulk's safe house in Mexico.
You're Hulk again.
Smart Hulk.
Hold the phone. The Russos came up with Smart Hulk to differentiate Endgame's new version of the character. But now it's his canonical in-universe name? Why?
I didn't come up with it. You never have a choice with these names.
Then who did? Literally no one has ever referred to him by that name. And why does he feel the need to tell it to Jen? He clearly doesn't like the name. Is it purely to set up a joke?
Smug Hulk.
Smart Hulk.
Of course it is.
We share a rare combination of genetic factors that allow us to synthesize gamma radiation.
What? Have the writers not seen The Incredible Hulk? They seem to think that the only external factor that turned Bruce into the Hulk was a high dose of gamma radiation. They don't know about the radiation-resistant serum. If this is the case, then that explains this exposition. The writers believe they are providing an explanation for something that has been a mystery until now. Why did exposure to gamma radiation turn Bruce into the Hulk? And how could they create a similar scenario for Jen to become She-Hulk? Their solution was this vague idea of genetic factors that allow their bodies to utilize gamma. They have unwittingly created an enormous contrivance by implementing a solution to a non-existent problem. Now we must accept the following reality. While Bruce was developing a serum to allow the body to synthesize radiation, his unique genetic makeup coincidentally already allowed him to do so. This is beyond stupid. No one in The Incredible Hulk acts like this is the case. Wouldn't Bruce and Betty have analyzed his blood work before conducting this experiment to get an idea of how the serum would affect him? Wouldn't they have noticed something peculiar about his biology? General Ross was dead set on recreating the Hulk, which is why he needed Bruce. However, if it was some sort of unique genetic factors that created the Hulk, why didn't he investigate Bruce's relatives? Why didn't Stearns mention these genetic factors when he described the Hulk's mechanics? He studied Bruce's blood extensively.
The gamma pulse came from the amygdala. I think Dr. Ross's primer lets the cells absorb the energy temporarily and then it abates.
You see, this is what happens when you don't do your homework.
You and I, we share a rare combination of genetic factors. I have been analyzing your blood, and the way it synthesized gamma, I was able to use it to completely heal my arm.
If Jen became She-Hulk because she shares certain genetic factors with Bruce, why would her blood heal his arm when his own blood couldn't? Also,
clearly, when you wield the full power of the Infinity Stones, it is irreparable damage to your being.
I guess the might of the Infinity Stones are no match for Jen's uber-special blood.
I have been analyzing your blood, and the way it synthesized gamma, I was able to use it to completely heal my arm.
Because I'm better than you?
It's just basically different.
In a better way.
Whoa, now that's telling. Jen's initial reaction isn't happiness for Hulk. It isn't even excitement over the potential of her blood to cure injuries. Instead, it's all about her and how this accomplishment reflects on herself. This indicates that Jen is a self-centered person, quick to brag and attribute success to herself.
My arm is healed, and now I'm able to be my fully integrated self again.
Smug Hulk.
This is immediately followed by projection, calling Bruce smug after saying something overtly smug. Hulk destroys Jen's blood samples.
It's way too dangerous to get out in the world, even if there's only a 1,000,000% chance that it makes another one of us.
Okay.
This makes sense. The Incredible Hulk stressed how dangerous Bruce's blood is.
Bruce, this is all you. This gamma technology has limitless applications.
We've got to destroy it, all of it. Tonight, we're going to incinerate it.
We could get the Nobel for this.
You don't understand the power of this thing. It is too dangerous. It cannot be controlled.
We have the antidote now.
They don't want the antidote. They want to make it a weapon.
And we saw firsthand what happens when it gets into the wrong hands. On the topic of Jen's blood, both her and Hulk seem to overlook an obvious complication: Jen's menstruation. Hulk believes no less than incineration is necessary, so he definitely wouldn't be satisfied with Jen throwing her menstrual pads in the trash. And despite Jen being at Hulk's safe house for several months, neither of them bring up this concern. Smart Hulk's cautiousness, and Jen's biology, would have prevented them from forgetting this detail, so why is it never brought up? When Smart Hulk explains that this will radically change her life for years to come, Jen asks for an inhibitor device just like the one he was wearing earlier in the episode. That way, she can immediately return to her normal life.
That device was a prototype. It was calibrated specifically to
Make
me.
me one. Calibrate it to me.
Can't do it,
Yes,
Jen.
you can.
It seems the writers couldn't be fucked to come up with a legitimate reason for Hulk to not do so. Everything we see in the episode tells us he can make one, yet he says he can't and doesn't elaborate. Jen, despite being desperate to resume her life, doesn't question him further, which is definitely not in line with her character. The writers have accidentally fucked themselves. You see, the inhibitor was needed to put Bruce in human form, so he could bleed and thus turn Jen into She-Hulk. They had a problem and created the inhibitor to solve it. But now they've hit another bump in the road. Jen doesn't want to be She-Hulk, and this device means she never has to be. The central conflict of the show has been erased, and the writers need yet another solution for this dilemma of their own making. But rather than come up with something clever, they just said, fuck it, and didn't bother with even a flimsy excuse. Smart Hulk just says, nah, I can't. During this scene, Jen is pretty upset.
Make me one. For me. Calibrate it to me.
I have been struggling with this for years. The best that I could do was merge my two halves. We could possibly do the same for you.
No. I just got my own office. I have
Jen,
business
this is
cards.
it. There is no going back to what you were before.
But she doesn't Hulk out. Compare this to the bar scene. A few seconds of unwanted attention was enough to make her go berserk. Here, Hulk is dropping bombshell after bombshell, and Jen isn't taking it well, yet she remains in human form. Juxtapose this to the Incredible Hulk, which precisely defined when the transformation occurred, going so far as to place a specific BPM to it. Despite being told that Jen's transformation works by the same rules, there's no consistent trigger for her Hulk outs. It changes depending on what the writers want from scene to scene. To begin the process of integrating Jen's Hulk half, Smart Hulk sets up a test to trigger a transformation.
The triggers are anger and fear.
Those are like the baseline of any woman just existing.
Right. Kinda cringe.
Hulk almost kills Jen with saw blades. What the fuck? He even admits there's no contingency.
Kind of feels like if I don't transform, I'm gonna die. Do you have a plan B for that?
Nope.
Smart Hulk's a cautious guy, as is demonstrated numerous times in this very episode. Why would he do something so reckless? Jen hulks out and breaks out of the chamber. Hulk tries to calm her when they realize she's completely conscious as She-Hulk. She has no alter ego and no shift in personality. And yeah, that's not satisfying. Bruce's journey set a precedent. It took him a lot of work to become a whole person. Jen just gets to start out integrated for no reason. How is the audience meant to get invested if there's no struggle?
Bruh. You know, that's about $1 million worth of damage back there.
Wait, if Jen is conscious, that means she purposefully caused all that damage and doesn't give a shit. This defines Jen as a reckless and unsympathizing person, willing to trash Hulk shit just because she's angry. These traits will get further expanded on as we continue.
The first time, it was so intense I could barely remember what was happening, but now it's like, it settled in.
So Jen wasn't in control those first two Hulk outs. But like a light switch, she now has complete control. Why? There is nothing to explain this transition. Yet again, it stems from a problem the writers sought to solve. For whatever reason, they were dead set on having those bar scenes. However, if Jen was in control from her first Hulk out, she would have no reason to go there. At the same time, they want Jen to be a fully integrated Hulk, so they claim her Hulk form settled in after barely a day. And even with this excuse, the bar scenes still aren't justified. Bruce was conscious and hulking out at the same time Jen was. He would have caught her immediately. The episode should have gone from the crash straight to the safe house in Mexico. The bar scenes add nothing and fuck up the pacing.
How do I turn back into Jen? How did you do it?
Usually I'd fall out of a jet or I'd get knocked out by a robot and I'd wake up as Banner. Natasha for a little while would tell me a lullaby.
First of all, why isn't Hulk explaining that calming down causes you to revert back into human form? Second, Veronica is a mech, not a robot. Hulk is smart enough to know this. Third, why is he talking about the lullaby like it was a literal lullaby? It was a ritual that calmed Hulk. It put the beast to sleep, so to speak. That's why they called it a lullaby. This reframing is so awkward, it requires Hulk to say he was told a lullaby. You sing a lullaby, you don't tell one. The writers have made Hulk describe the previous Marvel movies as if to purposefully make them sound as stupid as possible.
Natasha for a little while would tell me a lullaby.
Walk me through how that worked again.
I don't have a great explanation for it.
Hulk doesn't understand how the lullaby works? Seriously? Then how did they come up with it in the first place? I assumed it was something devised by Bruce and Natasha, but apparently he's clueless about it. It's like the writers couldn't wrap their heads around the idea, so they had Hulk not understand it either. I get the strong impression the writers haven't seen much of the previous movies, and of the ones they have seen, they don't particularly like or respect them. Great, just the people we want running a Hulk show.
I don't think you have thought through how dangerous this level of power is. I mean, one mistake, one freakout is literally life or death.
Okay, I'll be careful.
Wow, Jen. It seems like you really don't care about the safety of those around you. This reinforces her self-centered nature. She brushes aside the lethal danger she poses to others, assuming she can just be careful, despite it being only a day since she nearly murdered a bunch of people.
Anger means death and destruction for everything and everyone around you when people start seeing you as a monster that never goes away.
Fine.
This is a rare, serious moment for Smart Hulk, and helps get across the dire consequences of being the Hulk, to both Jen and the audience. This is life or death. This godlike power is a curse, one that can lead to untold suffering if approached carelessly. For this fleeting moment, it's like we have actual stakes. Hulk tries to teach Jen yoga, but she doesn't take it seriously, so they give up.
You do revert back to Gen form when you sleep.
What are you talking about? She went to bed in Gen form in the first place. The show can't remember what happened in the previous movies. Can it at least remember what happened in the last scene? Jen is taught about being a Hulk.
Spandex is your best friend.
¿Tienes más stretchy?
She takes none of it seriously and proves to be better than Hulk at almost every task during her first attempt. Smart Hulk becomes increasingly jealous and insecure.
I think I'm jealous. Is that what I'm feeling? You don't have another guy to wrestle with for 10 years.
So much for Smart Hulk getting over Bruce's inferiority complex.
Becoming Smart Hulk fixed Banner's inferiority complex, and so now he just thinks he's awesome.
And like with Jen's ability to control her Hulk form, her instant great skill at everything Smart Hulk tries to teach her isn't very satisfying. One way to make an audience root for a character is to give them a challenge to overcome. So far, Jen has 0 challenges. And it devalues Hulk's journey. He spent over a decade managing his condition and becoming a complete person. Jen gets there instantaneously and is even better than him in some areas. There's no justification for this and only serves to make Hulk look incompetent.
When you have powers like this, it's like putting a target on your back and the backs of all the people you care about.
Oh, yet another way my life is ruined. Thanks, Bruce!
Hulk is trying to stress how she needs to be able to protect herself and those she loves. Jen is entirely ungrateful for this and even blames him for her circumstances. But it was her own damn fault.
Inhibitor. Jen, get away from me. I'm bleeding.
And even so, she knows he's the Hulk. She should have already known to avoid Bruce's blood. And she's the one who crashed the car in the first place, because she was too busy talking about Cap's sex life to watch the road.
Obviously, Captain America wasn't virgin. Look
out! Jen takes no responsibility for her actions.
All right, all I've been doing is showing you the downsides of being a Hulk, but there are a few upsides. We can drink so much and not get drunk.
Not sure how that's a positive, but whatever. We get a rare moment of Jen not treating Hulk like crap. It's soured by the realization that she's only being nice because she's now gotten something out of being She-Hulk that benefits her personally. They try yoga again, and Jen reiterates her desire to leave.
Being a superhero is a trial by fire.
Bruce! I'm not gonna be a superhero.
What else you gonna do as a Hulk?
Return to my career.
It's not one or the other, Jen. But we can't pretend. Like we are 2 of the few people on Earth that can actually protect her.
Bruce has always wanted to help people, and after he learned that Hulk could be used as a force for good, he embraced that part of himself and became willing to unleash Hulk to protect the innocent. He's also dealt with extraordinary threats, the sort of thing few people are capable of facing. He knows the importance of such people banding together to protect the world, so it makes perfect sense for Hulk to have this perspective. Smart Hulk tries to impart this wisdom to Jen, but she's not having it. While her initial desire to return to her normal life is understandable, her continued refusal to use She-Hulk in a responsible manner characterizes her as selfish and even hypocritical. At the start of the episode, Jen was practicing her closing argument for a case.
What is the responsibility of those with power? Do they have a duty to protect those without it? Show them that they will be held accountable, because those with the most power have the most to answer for.
She's become the exact person she'll later criticize, but she doesn't realize it. She's been granted this great power, yet has no interest in taking responsibility for it. Normally, I would assume this is set up for a character arc, but the episode never frames Jen as morally wrong for this selfishness. She suffers no negative consequences for it. There's no Uncle Ben moment. Perhaps it'll be explored in the rest of the show, but I think it's the job of episode 1 to clearly set this up. Hulk reiterates the importance of Jen controlling her anger.
I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street. When incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
Hulk has spent over a decade learning to control his anger, while simultaneously being hunted by the US military, dealing with threats to the planet, and trying not to harm the innocent. How can Jen say she's more experienced at controlling her anger with a straight face? She's not stupid, she knows everything Hulk's been through. But the scene's directing implies we should take her seriously, which is silly. Catcalling? Really? That's your big example of how difficult your life is? You do realize you're talking to someone that's attempted suicide, right?
I didn't see an end, so I put a bullet in my mouth and the other guy spit it out.
Someone who's unwillingly killed people. Someone who's lost his closest friends. Someone who's had to make hard sacrifices for the greater good. There is no self-awareness on Jen's part, and she's never given a reality check. As far as the episode's concerned, she's right. Which is why it's even more bizarre that, spoiler alert, Jen is the one to lose her cool multiple times, not Hulk. Jen attempts to leave.
The idea of being a superhero is not appealing to me. I'm not you. I don't need to join some secret government contractor squad and have my entire life taken away from me.
My life wasn't taken away.
So you didn't wind up alone? With no friends, no relationships, never seeing your family, and definitely not dealing with a decade's worth of trauma?
Wow. Are the writers trying to make her despicable on purpose? Jen has zero empathy for what Hulk's been through, going so far as to mock him for ending up alone.
You're a cautionary tale.
That's the price you have to pay for keeping the world safe.
I am choosing to help people in the way that I've always wanted to.
Jen again dismisses the idea that she has any responsibility for the power she's been given. This seems to stem from a desire to keep her life just the way she likes it. She isn't interested in making any sacrifices for the sake of others. Hulk attempts to stop Jen from driving off, but gets thrown back, crashing into some rocks. Hulk could kill a Leviathan with a single punch, but somehow he's no match for a Jeep? Seriously? Their argument flares up and Jen attacks Hulk, starting a fight. Somehow, Jen is on par with Hulk's strength, despite getting a fraction of the gamma and being dramatically smaller than him. The episode doesn't want Jen to face the consequences for her harsh words, so she doesn't. If she were greatly weaker than Hulk, he could physically keep her at the safe house. Jen would then be forced to convincingly argue her perspective to Hulk, which would be incredibly difficult given that it comes from a place of selfishness and recklessness. The fight ends when they accidentally destroy Hulk's bar. Jen helps him rebuild it, and Hulk agrees to let her go.
So if you want to go back to your life as a lawyer, I respect that.
He doesn't mean that.
Jen breaks the fourth wall 3 times during the episode, 2 that are used to transition to it from the flashback, and then this one. I know it's from the comics, but so far the show hasn't justified it. We didn't need Jen to talk directly to the audience to transition to a flashback, and this fourth wall break is only for a half-assed joke. Also, because of how infrequently the episode uses it, I found it jarring every time it happened.
And I'm sorry that I said a bunch of harsh but very true things.
Jen acted like a complete cunt, not even bothering to give Hulk a proper apology, and there are no negative repercussions for this. She doesn't even have to deal with a soured relationship with her cousin. Even now, he's still willing to help her.
You know, I'm literally the only other person in the world that understands what you're going through. So call me anytime.
Aside from a few tiny moments, Jen hasn't acted like she cares about him at all, yet she still receives the benefits of his friendship. She's basically rewarded for her terrible behavior. Back in the present,
Basically, I was right and Bruce was wrong.
this is to set up the next scene where Jen has to use She-Hulk. At first glance, you might think this is the episode admitting that Hulk was correct. It does seem to be saying that in some respect, Jen can't just ignore her Hulk half, but it's yet to be seen if Hulk will be vindicated in the many other good points he made.
These accidental deaths were an unfortunate byproduct of an ambitious expansion plan. Did my client know lives would be endangered? That is debatable and depends on your definition of knowing.
The hell kind of defense is that? He basically just said, my client is guilty, but, you know, you should let him off because of semantics. I think this harms Jen's struggles. She boasts about working hard and progressing her career as a lawyer. But if this is her competition, her accomplishments aren't very impressive.
Don't screw this up, Walters.
Earlier, Jen mentioned incompetent men explaining her area of expertise to her. It's now obvious that Dennis was included as an example of such a man. This explains why he's such a cartoon. His only purpose is to embody this complaint. He's not a real character. Just like the defense Jen is up against, his inclusion makes it more difficult to take Jen's struggles seriously. They feel less serious and less real.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yeah! A superpowered lady bursts in and starts terrorizing the courtroom. I think. It's difficult to tell what she's trying to do. Jen is content to duck and cover like the others. Her friend Nikki actually has to pester her into using She-Hulk to help people.
Oh, God, I really like this outfit.
The idea of even slightly inconveniencing herself in order to save lives is apparently so fucking terrible. Jen easily stops the super bimbo in an awful action scene, and the episode ends with a cringy line.
I'm ready to give my closing argument now.
Bitch, the courtroom is destroyed. You're not giving any closing statement. Wow, this was worse than I expected. It's yet another Marvel property that flagrantly contradicts its previous world building and characters, either for the sake of comedy or as a result of lazy writing. I get the distinct impression that these writers don't actually like Hulk very much, trashing his lore and belittling his character. Jen is an insufferable protagonist. She's self-centered to a delusional degree, somehow thinking her mundane life is at all comparable to Hulk's extensive struggle. She's callous, treating Hulk terribly, and going so far as to mock his trauma and loneliness. She's also incredibly selfish, dismissing all of Hulk's advice and wisdom, insisting she always knows best despite Hulk's experience. And she's hypocritical, insisting that those with power must take responsibility for it and refusing to do so herself. I would have been fine with all of this had they been framed as character flaws, but they're not. She's meant to be in the right, and she suffers no negative consequences from her actions. Smart Hulk is made out to be an insecure idiot, one of those incompetent men trying to teach her things she's already an expert at. One of the few things I appreciated about Hulk in Endgame was the return of his confidence, but that's been stripped from him yet again. And on the topic of insecure men, it's difficult not to notice that every male character is portrayed as either stupid or malicious. It's a pretty shitty way to write people, and will undoubtedly alienate a large portion of the audience. The episode is in constant conflict with itself, insisting one thing while demonstrating the opposite. The women are supposed to be helpful, yet their actions are unhelpful. The men are supposed to be threatening, yet their actions are annoying at worst. Jen is supposed to be better at controlling her anger than Hulk is, yet she's the one to lash out violently. The episode is also ineffective at solving problems. It consistently throws in half-assed solutions to writing dilemmas. Yet this creates more issues that require yet more flimsy patches. What we end up with is a bunch of adhesive bandages slapped over a giant stab wound. It's laughable. Overall, She-Hulk Episode 1 feels like a show made by people who don't like Hulk and aren't very experienced with writing.